From Finland to Zimbabwe, Korea to Turkey, football players, coaches and officials have either admitted or been found guilty of fixing games. So, how long has this corruption been going on for, and how will it affect the future of the sport? This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Nick Clark. FIFA chief Sepp Blatter is in Zimbabwe and has promised to crack down on match fixing in football. During his two-day visit, he appeared to take a tough stance against anyone found guilty of corruption.
When these people are condemned and found guilty, then we will suspend them for life. Then they will never come back to football, being officials or being players. Banned for life.
His words come as British MPs demanded an investigation into football's governing body. The Parliamentary Committee for Culture, Media and Sport accused FIFA of an approach bordering on contempt when dealing with bribery allegations within the organisation itself. And this comes amid further claims that British club West Ham made improper payments to secure the running of the Olympic Stadium after the 2012 Games, an allegation West Ham vehemently deny. Well, corruption in football is nothing new. Those involved in the game, whether as coaches, players or officials, have been found guilty of fixing or attempting to fix games in recent years. The biggest current case involves the Turkish side Fenerbahce, who won their 18th league title in the last season. Well, the president of the club and three other club bosses were arrested on match-fixing charges. Then there's the Korean league star Choi Sung-kook, also being investigated for match-fixing. 10 players in the league, in fact, have already been indicted. On Friday, officials in Finland opened a criminal investigation into Tampere United, that's a top club in the country, for money laundering and match fixing. And in Zimbabwe, national team players alleged they were paid to lose matches in 2009 while on tour in Asia. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by our guests from London, Mehrdad Massoudi, producer of a weekly football magazine show, Football Mundial. Mr. Massoudi was also the former media press officer for the FIFA 1998 World Cup, that was in France. And also from London, we have Gavin Hamilton, the editor of World Soccer magazine. OK, let's get this underway straight away. Mr. Hamilton, first of all, the beautiful game stinks pretty rotten right now. It's in a real mess, isn't it?
It's in a mess across the board, really. I mean, I think we've had a lot of allegations from within FIFA, and FIFA's had its biggest crisis, the greatest crisis in its history in recent times, with allegations surrounding the World Cup bidding process and the presidential election. But those allegations are very much centred on corruption within FIFA. The match-fixing scandals that are unfolding almost daily at the moment are an entirely different problem. And they're really a criminal situation that needs to be dealt with, and FIFA, I think, has been a little bit slow off the mark in dealing with some of these match-fixing situations. They've really taken the lead from UEFA, the European governing body, but FIFA now are starting to talk tough. But it's hard to take Sepp Blatter seriously when you heard him there, and we heard him there talking about tackling corruption when he's got corruption within his own organisation that he's not taking seriously.
And when you look at all of these issues, match-fixing, corruption within the game's governing body, how do you assess it? Do you feel that it's worse than it has been, the game is at its worst state than it has been in its history?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the problem is that the money is now so important in football that it inevitably brings problems, and it's how you deal with that influx of money that really is the crucial issue. And FIFA hasn't dealt well with the amount of money that comes into the game for the World Cup, and the World Cup is now a multi-million-pound business and a multi-billion-dollar business, if you like, and the decisions about the World Cup are very important and invite corruption because of the way the process is very secretive. But I think the big problem with match fixing has been the development of technology, and particularly the internet and gambling on the internet, because match fixing used to be about fixing the result of a game. That was, people would bet on the outcome, the final outcome of a game. But now, because of technology and betting technology on the internet, people can place bets during a game on almost anything that happens in a game. which means that you don't have to fix the result. You can bet on the number of throw-ins, the number of corners, the awarding of a penalty, the minute the penalty is awarded within a game, how many minutes of injury time are played within the game. All these things now are open to invite bets and as a result invite corruption as well.
So Mehrdad Massoudi, journalist now, a former press officer, as we said before, with FIFA back in the 1998 World Cup in France. From your perspective, how do you view the game right now?
Basically, match fixing and corruption goes back a long time. The first scandalous match fixing incident took place in 1915, almost 100 years ago, 96 years ago, between Liverpool and Manchester United, of all clubs. It was before the First World War, and the league was going to come to a halt. Manchester United was facing relegation. Liverpool had nothing to play for. 7 players were involved, and since then it's been going on basically all across the world. The only difference now is it's a globalized industry. Internet has helped the spread of this industry from the Far East to the southern tip of Africa to the northern tip of Americas, throughout Europe, and it's a problem that no governing body on its own can solve. We are dealing with criminals here, very well organized criminals. In 1987, 3 Canadian players were involved with a match-fixing scandal involving their national team game against North Korea in the Merlion Cup in Singapore. Now the same, not exactly the same, but the same type of group have now spread their net much wider. They operate in Finland, in the far northern part of Finland, a club that signed 9 players from Zambia on perhaps 2,000 euros a year. 2,000 euros a year. And considering the amount of money that is in football and the absolute power clubs and governing bodies have, and these 2 elements inevitably lead to corruption.
Okay, so yeah, it's pretty tempting for players who are on lower wages, I guess. But if it's been going on for so long, it makes you wonder why nothing has been done about it by the governing bodies in the past.
It's very, very difficult. The most a governing body, let's say FIFA or UEFA or the Finnish Football Association can do is to place a lifetime ban on a player. What happens to the criminal who escapes the net? The criminal moves from one country to another, from one continent to another. The same criminal who was, or alleged criminal who was in Finland, the Singapore businessman, organized a game between Togo or supposedly Togolese national team in Maname against Bahrain. As it turned out, those group of players were not actually football players. They were organized with the help of someone from within the federation to travel to Maname for an international friendly. And you have friendlies now all over the world. We had friendlies in Antalya between Peru and, I believe, Estonia, with 4 penalties in one game that ended up 2-2. Referees changed before the match. How could the Turkish Football Association, the host association, have a control over that? This is a big question that no one is able to answer right now.
All right, guys, just hang on there for a bit. I just wanted to get a perspective from one specific country. I'm joined on the phone from Turkey, from Istanbul, in fact, by Emin Özkurt, who's a sports law expert. He's also the General Secretary of the Sports Law Institute in Istanbul. Mr. Özkurt, we have this high-profile case that we mentioned earlier with Fenerbahce, a high-profile football team in Turkey. Should we be surprised by what's happening in Turkey? How widespread is it there, and how are fans taking it?
Yes, first of all, good evening to all. The Turkish police on Sunday detained more than 60 people for questioning over allegations of football match fixing, including the president of the league champion Fenerbahce. Well, to be honest with you, this is a big shock for Turkey and big shock for Turkish football. No one was expecting this. We are now slightly learning about the details of the prosecution of the claims, and it seems that it's going to go even more deeper. And the Turkish football is in very big crisis right now.
So what's the main motivation for players?
For the match fixing.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's absolutely the amount of money which they can get from a single game. There are some allegations that one of the players, who is an former international, Turkish international, has received around 300,000 euros per game. So
300,000 euros, and that just illustrates the scale of money potentially that we're talking about. So it's not just the small-time players at small-time clubs that might be encouraged by 3,000 or 4,000 euros, but there's a great deal of money at stake here.
Well, the police is investigating possibly fixing of a final week match between Fenerbahce and Sivasspor, which ended in a 4-3 victory for the Istanbul side and helped it claim the league title. Therefore, it was this year it was a very competitive race for the titleship, and the winner of the Turkish Premier League receives around $25 million when he gets the title championship. So basically, what we are talking about here is huge amount of money, and due to that reason, several let's say criminal people also involved in this match fixing.
Yeah, criminal organisations. There's a lot at stake here, isn't there?
Criminal organizations.
So how many efforts finally are there? What efforts are being made to try and clamp down on this within Turkey? How difficult is it to stop it?
Well, there are two aspects of this matter right now. The first aspect is the criminal court investigation, the prosecution, which is done by the prosecutor's office. This is one issue, one side. It is going to take several years, most probably, to come out with a resolution about this issue. However, the Turkish Football Federation doesn't seem to wait for this 3 years or 2 years possible court case hearings. And most probably within a week's time, the Turkish Football Federation will get in touch with the prosecutor's office and get details of the case and the possible evidences about the match fixing. And then we'll decide on the future of Fenerbahce and the other clubs and the players and the managers who are involved with this match fixing probe.
All right, Emin Ozkay, we appreciate your contribution to this programme. Very interesting. That's a picture there in Turkey on the specific case in Fenerbahce, one of the cases that's going on in Turkey. Let's bring back our London guests. First of all, Gavin Hamilton from World Soccer Magazine, and Mehrdad Masudi also there in London. Mr. Hamilton, 300,000 euros, one player. Do those sort of figures surprise you?
They do, because it's an extraordinary case that's unfolding in Turkey, because we've got a situation where this was not a low-key match. This was the end of season finale. This was the final game of the season, which Fenerbahce had to win the Turkish league title in order to qualify for the Champions League, the group stage of the Champions League, which is in itself a pathway to an awful lot of money for the club. So there was a lot of money at stake, and this is the first case I think we've seen of a case in this situation, a very high-profile European game. The examples that we've seen elsewhere in places like Finland, and also in Germany throughout the second division in Germany, a very big case in Bochum recently that's involved clubs across Central Europe. Most of those games were low-key games where the attendances were very low, where the players were on very small wages, often part-time players, where they didn't need to be paid £300,000 or 300,000 euros to fix a match. They'd been offered bribes of 10,000 euros and smaller sums of money, but sums of money that would make a big difference to their lifestyle. So the Turkish situation is interesting because this is corruption on a higher level, higher up the football food chain.
Right. And Mehrdad Masudi, it's really troubling, isn't it? If the big time earners are getting pulled in by this, by big offers of money, then it could spread to the upper echelons of the game across Europe, across the world.
It is indeed. And what makes football fascinating and so popular around the world is its simplicity and spontaneity. When fans feel that the results of the games are actually decided not on the football pitch but elsewhere, not by the players but by individuals who are manipulating those players, coaches, officials and governing bodies, it will lose its appeal. Nobody would want to go and watch those games live, or watch them on TV. Television has brought a lot of revenue to football. It's the investment of those funds and those monies in the infrastructure of the game that is going to counter this problem. Just outside football, I'll give you an example of cricket. Cricket had problems last year with some Pakistani players allegedly accepting bribe. But one should look perhaps beyond that. When a governing body of a sport, like the England Cricket Board, accepted huge sums of money to go and play one-day international from an individual who was found on the wrong side of the law later on, then what chances are there for those players down the pyramid of play? So I think sports in general, they have to clean up. Money corrupts. Doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in politics, sports, arts, cinema, and when you think of governing bodies of sports, when they have absolute power, that's troubling.
Gavin Hamilton, do you agree with that? Too much money at the top level?
I think there is. I mean, I think FIFA is still very much an amateur organisation, and its structures are still, very similar to the way they were when FIFA was formed at the early part of the 20th century. But it's now dealing in billions of dollars of sponsorship and TV money every year, and that money's flowing into the game, and it's being handled by amateurs, if you like, within FIFA. Okay, there are lots of good professional people in FIFA, but the democratic structures of FIFA and the way people are elected is still very amateurish, and that's a concern, I think. But I think FIFA and UEFA particularly are putting structures in place to try and tackle match fixing. And one of the reasons that we're seeing cases now, not necessarily Turkey, but in some of the cases in Germany and Korea and Finland, is because UEFA and FIFA are now monitoring betting patterns a lot more of matches, and we're seeing unusual betting patterns emerging, and FIFA taking action to highlight those matches and investigate those matches. We didn't have those structures a few years ago, and that's why we didn't hear about these cases. We're now hearing a lot more about these cases because of the action that's being taken by UEFA and FIFA. But ultimately, this is a criminal matter, and it's up to FIFA to try and work with organisations like Interpol to try and tackle the gambling syndicates that are actually placing the bets in places like the Far East in the first place.
But the problem is, as I think you alluded to earlier yourself, Gavin Hamilton, that it's all a bit mucky, isn't it, when the organisation that's charged with policing this problem is also accused of bribery and all sorts of other underhand activities.
It's very interesting to hear Sepp Blatter say that these people will be banned for life and thrown out of football. They've just let Jack Warner, who's been accused, and FIFA said themselves they had serious evidence of corruption by Jack Warner. He's been allowed to quit FIFA and retire with a 20-year pension, a very, very handsome pension for the rest of his life. And he's led off with a handshake and a thank you very much, goodbye, Mr. Warner. And if you have that attitude within FIFA, it's very difficult to take Sepp Blatter seriously when he comes out and acts as the crusader who will tackle corruption and match fixing. But FIFA has put money aside to link up with Interpol, and will pay, I think it's about $20 million over a 10-year period to Interpol to try and tackle the criminal elements involved in match fixing. But $20 million is nothing compared to the amount of money that FIFA has to deal with in its annual budget. And FIFA's own executive committee paid its ExCo members and directors $32 million as a bonus last year in 1 year alone. So that's more than the money they're putting aside over 10 years to work with Interpol. So you have to put these things in perspective.
So we're not talking, as you discussed there, not talking just about match fixing, Mehdi Massoudi. It's also, we're looking at pictures there of Qatar winning the World Cup bid. It's also those accusations of potential bribery that was said to have gone on in gaining the cities for the World Cup bid.
It's not just those allegations of bribery, it's the approach bidding countries had. England, for instance, had promised to go and play in Bangkok against Thailand. Now the whole of English society is up in arms because Qatar has got the World Cup. But England ended up playing Trinidad and Tobago in Port of Spain to please Jack Warner, of all people. So if the English FA or the bidding body the bidding organization that was hoping to bring the 2018 FIFA World Cup to these shores in England, they didn't act appropriately, so they cannot cry foul now. As we all know, that game against Thailand was cancelled because Warabi, the Thai representative on the FIFA Executive Committee, did not vote for England. So that game was tied to a vote. It wasn't requested by Fabio Capello for technical reasons. So everyone is added in this game. There is no question there needs to be reform from top to bottom, starting from the FIFA Executive Committee. Personally, I think lifetime membership, as some FIFA Executive Committee members enjoy, is a privilege that should be taken away, should be limited perhaps to 8 years, to 3 terms, maybe 12 years. So everyone comes in with an agenda for their confederation and for the world governing body. Now we have people, Jack Warner was there for 28 years, others who have been there perhaps not as long, but almost as long from Latin America. Franz Beckenbauer was there for 4 years. He stepped down. He is a very credible individual. Perhaps he saw things that he didn't feel comfortable to live with for the next 4 years.
But the thing is that maybe there's just too much hand-wringing going on here, because corruption is prevalent in pretty much every walk of life, isn't it, Gavin Hamilton? It's wrong, but it's not surprising that football has it too.
No, and I think it's a question of acknowledging that corruption does exist, and there is the scope for corruption within football. I think Sepp Blatter's completely right to acknowledge the existence of match fixing, and we're seeing that with the scandals that are unfolding at the moment. But I think within FIFA you have to acknowledge that there are problems within that organisation, and that's the problem at the moment, that Blatter is not acknowledging that the corrupting influences exist within FIFA, with the EXCO members enjoying this secrecy and a lack of transparency in their affairs, and they enjoy this 5-star, first-class lifestyle with extravagant bonuses as well. You can't on the one hand have that sort of system in place within FIFA, which is a secretive organisation that resists calls for more transparency, and on the other hand say that you're going to tackle match fixing. It's you can't have, you need to be a lot more open and transparent in the way you conduct your own affairs.
Just one other thing on this issue of match fixing. I'm just a bit curious how it actually works. We're just running out of time, so just keep it brief if you would. I mean, surely it takes more than one player in one team to be able to fix a match. I mean, you need everybody involved. You can't just have we talked about one guy getting $300,000, but you need 300,000 euros, but you need more people to be involved. The conventional wisdom has always been that you can't bribe an entire team to fix a game, and that football's a very difficult game to corrupt. But what we're seeing with internet betting and in-play betting is that referees, for example, in recent international matches have awarded very dubious penalties at certain times within a game, very late in a game. The game between Nigeria and Argentina recently, a friendly played in Nigeria, featured a goal for Argentina in the 7th minute of injury time. A very dubious penalty was awarded. Nigeria had already won the match, but there was a lot of money was placed late in the game on Argentina being awarded a penalty. So it's those sort of things that people now bet on, and they're far more lucrative than actually trying to determine the overall results. And that's the real problem that match fixing has now, and that's why it's become much more of a problem in recent times. All right, James, we've got just over a minute left. Mr. Masudi, what do you think? Can it be drummed out of the game? Can the game be cleaned up?
Very, very difficult. As I said at the beginning, it's been part of the game practically since the game was invented. But it can be contained. It is beyond the jurisdiction of FIFA, UEFA, or any sports governing body. It has, in order to clean up, or at least move towards that direction, organization, governments, and international organizations such as Interpol have to play a very active role.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks very much indeed. Mehrdad Masudi and Gavin Hamilton, both in London. Earlier we heard on the phone from Emin Ozkurt. We appreciate all of you and your contributions to this show. And thanks for watching this edition of Inside Story. Drop us an email if you have any comments or suggestions, insidestory@aljazeera.net. From me, Nick Clark, it's goodbye.